If you were called stupid as a kid, this video explains why that was never true. Number 8. The height experiment. As a kid, you climbed things you weren't supposed to. Trees, fences, railings. Anything higher than last time. You jumped before thinking. You fell. You scraped your knees. Then you got back up. Adults called it reckless, dangerous, stupid. But your brain wasn't empty back then. It was running a risk simulation system no school ever teaches. How high is still okay? Where do my feet slip? If I fall, how do I land? Every slip was a physics experiment. Every recovery was a data update. So the hidden advantage wasn't recklessness, it was risk calibration. You didn't lose your sense of fear, you learned how to measure it. That's why as an adult you don't freeze under pressure. You react fast, you adjust quickly, you make decisions while you're already falling, both literally and metaphorically. When things don't go according to plan, you don't panic because your brain is used to this truth. Things will go off course and you can still handle it. Number 7. The rule-breaking experiment. If you were the kid who broke toys, this is for you. You didn't play, you dissected. You took them apart, snapped pieces off, and never quite put them back the same. Adults called it wasteful, careless, stupid. But you weren't destroying, you were reverse engineering. While other kids followed instructions, you followed curiosity, testing what made it move and, more importantly, what made it fail. You learned early that breaking something is often the fastest way to understand it. That's why complexity doesn't intimidate you now. When a project, a line of code, or even a relationship fails, you don't see chaos. You see a system that needs debugging. You're comfortable sitting inside the mess long enough to map the weak points. Most people freeze when things break. You move closer because you know a rare secret. Nothing is too complicated. It's just unopened. Number 6. The efficiency experiment. You were labeled lazy and weird early. You dragged chairs instead of lifting them, used your feet instead of your hands, turned 2 trips into 1. Adults mistook speed for shortcuts and shortcuts for flaws, but your brain was asking a different question than everyone else. Why is this necessary? What part of this actually matters? What can be removed without breaking the result? That wasn't laziness. That was optimization pressure. You felt inefficiency the way others feel discomfort. Repetition annoyed you. Wasted motion felt wrong. So now, as an adult, you don't glorify exhaustion. You look for leverage, you automate, you simplify. You redesign workflows so effort doesn't scale with workload. Number 5, the why questioning. You were taught that good kids don't talk back. So when you did, when you asked why one too many times, you felt it immediately. The silence, the look, the guilt. You learned early that questioning authority made people uncomfortable, and at some point, you stopped asking out loud. But here's what actually happened in your brain. Every why you asked was a stress test. Not of your parents, but of the idea itself. Does this rule have a reason? Does this explanation hold up? What breaks if I push it? You weren't being difficult. You were checking for structural integrity. Most people grow up learning how to follow answers. You were learning how to evaluate them. So now when you're in meetings, you hear what others miss. You notice gaps, assumptions, convenient logic dressed up as certainty. While everyone else nods, your brain quietly asks, does this actually solve the problem? That's why you end up in rooms where decisions are made. Not because you're louder, but because you think one layer deeper. Questioning didn't make you disobedient. It trained you for leadership in a world full of unexamined ideas. Number 4, the fort builder experiment. Pause for a second. Think back to the room that annoyed adults the most. Cushions on the floor, chairs in the wrong place, blankets draped where they didn't belong. To them it was a mess. To you it was a structure. You weren't playing house, you were redesigning reality. You looked at a chair and didn't see something to sit on. You saw a pillar. A blanket wasn't fabric, it was a roof. The floor wasn't empty, it was unused space. Here's what mattered. You learned this before anyone taught you rules. You learned that environments are flexible, that space can be reshaped, that function is negotiable. Most people grow up waiting for the right setup, the right tools, the right budget, the right conditions. You don't. Because as an adult, when resources are limited, you don't stop. You prototype. You build version 1, then version 2, then something that works well enough to survive reality. You're the person who can start with nothing and still make something usable. A product, a system, a plan. Number 3, the niche obsession experiment. You didn't just like things, you disappeared into them. Dinosaurs, planets, basketball stats from seasons no one cared about anymore. You could talk for hours, you couldn't stop yourself. Adults smiled politely, then said it, interesting, but not very useful. Maybe focus on something that matters. What they didn't see was the pattern forming. While other kids skimmed everything, you went vertical. You didn't collect facts, you built internal maps, connections, exceptions, edge cases. You learned where information ended and where questions began. This wasn't obsession, it was deep focus rehearsal. Your brain was learning how to stay with a problem long after novelty wore off, how to keep digging when there was no reward, how to enjoy depth instead of variety. Fast forward to now. We live in a world where everyone knows a little about everything. AI made that cheap. What's rare is someone who can go deep enough to see what others miss. Patterns before they're obvious. Leverage before it's visible. You don't just learn topics, you enter them. That's the real advantage no one names. Number 2, the daydreaming experiment. The teacher snapped, "Your name," louder than necessary. Everyone turned around. Again, you were still staring out the window. Not because you didn't care, because your mind was somewhere else. Stay in the real world. That sentence followed you longer than the lesson. Here's the part people missed. Your brain was in the default mode network. This is when thinking stops being linear, when ideas don't line up politely, when one thought jumps 3 steps ahead and lands somewhere new. You weren't replaying the class, you were running simulations. Different futures, different versions, different outcomes. Most people think focus means narrowing your attention, but vision comes from letting it wander. You struggled with worksheets but thrived with possibilities. This is the root of visionary thinking. Everything big starts here. That's why, years later, you're the one who sees what isn't there yet. You spot possibilities before they make sense. You imagine outcomes before there's proof. You weren't distracted. You were early. While others were learning how the world works, you were quietly asking what it could become. Number 1, the dirty experiment. You came home dirty, mud on your hands, dust in your hair, scratches you couldn't explain. Adults sighed, worried, cleaned you up like something had gone wrong, but nothing went wrong. Your body was learning before you ever understood the lesson. Every time you played in the dirt, your immune system trained. It met chaos early. It learned what mattered and what didn't. And your mind followed the same pattern. You got used to discomfort, heat, cold, mess, failure. You learned that being uncomfortable doesn't mean being unsafe. So now when life gets rough, you don't flinch. Pressure doesn't feel like danger, it feels familiar. You recover faster, you adapt quicker, you don't fall apart at the first sign of friction. So which stupid thing did you get in trouble for as a kid, and how is it helping you now? Please comment below. I want to see if others lived the same experiment. If this made you see your childhood differently, like subscribe and stay curious.